Hello everyone, I'm Captain Logan and this is Superhero Rewind. Hardly anyone thinks Ben Affleck makes for a good Daredevil. The movie has gone down in history as simply a star vehicle for Affleck, and he's gone on record to say it was one of the most embarrassing things he's done. That's a shame because he actually turned in a grade A performance, and I'm sure he wouldn't feel that way if anyone had seen that grade A performance in a movie theater. Maybe he's not a very good Daredevil, but for my money, he's a perfect Matt Murdock. And I say that knowing someone's probably watching this and throwing Frank Miller comics at the computer screen. The trouble is, the best things Murdock does on screen aren't in the theatrical cut, and some of the decisions he makes were changed for that version to make it more of a brainless action picture. In the director's cut, Matt Murdock is more tragic, more sympathetic, and makes a whole lot more sense. He also drives a car while blind and crashes it repeatedly on purpose. The director's cut is a full half hour longer than the theatrical version, and it doesn't simply splice back in all the deleted scenes. It has a number of extended scenes, and it has scenes that are contrary to the other version. It takes its time without getting dull. By giving us a story rather than a bunch of fights in a row with cookie-cutter plot to hold them all together and no realistic character motivations, this version gives its audience some credit, and also offers a lot for people other than comic book geeks. If this was the version that had gone to theaters, we might not remember it as one of the best comic book films ever made, but we would remember it, and remember it fondly. Here's the story. Matt Murdock decides to defend a man named Dante Jackson who's on trial for killing a prostitute. Jackson says he's innocent, and of course Matt can always tell if someone's lying, so he takes up his case. Matt and Foggy go snooping around the woman's house looking for clues, and they find a date and initials scratched into a desk. It turns out Jackson was framed for the murder because the real man responsible was Wilson Fisk's right-hand man, Wesley Owen Welch. Turns out MOM was actually WOW upside down, and 8-9 was the night of the murder. With this information and the help of Ben Urich, the case of course leads Matt all the way to the Kingpin. So now, finally, it makes sense when Daredevil says "word's out on the Kingpin." We not only see that happen, but it's what the whole movie's about. The back of the DVD box calls all of this a, quote, devilish subplot. I disagree. This isn't the subplot at all. It's the meat of the film. It's the foundation everything else is built around. There is no crux to the theatrical version. The Kingpin killing Elektra's father isn't the story. It's simply a plot device to get the ball rolling. It's a superhero origin story in the middle of the main story, just like Daredevil's origin at the beginning isn't the main story either. This version has every single second and a few more of the Elektra plot that's in the theatrical cut, but when everything's added back in, it becomes a background piece until it's brought to the forefront at the end. There's a revenge story in this film, sure, but that's all the other version was. That's been critics' main complaint of it. But I think if this was the version that went to screen, fans would have actually found Elektra to be underused. The following characters are in both cuts, but none of them are done any justice whatsoever in the theatrical cut. Ben Urich. Before, he's just running around trying to find Daredevil and manages to get lucky. In this version, he's following the same case Matt Murdock is working on, helps him, and they build a real relationship. A scene between the two of them at the end shows Urich struggling with his decision to expose Daredevil because of his deep respect for Murdock. So now when he decides not to write the article, we understand why and can applaud him for it. Foggy Nelson. He's funny in the other version, but here he has dimension. He's an integral part of Matt's uncovering the Kingpin. There's also a scene where we find him struggling in the courtroom without Matt, and the audience feels for him because he's trying really hard, but he's really nothing without his partner, and that's an idea straight from the early comics. Also, his funniest gags are in this version. Karen Page. She's not even named in the theatrical version, though fans knew who she was supposed to be. She gets one scene, which was cut short even, where she's annoyed for not getting invited to Nachio's ball by Matt. But in this version, she too is made an integral part of the mystery story, as she's the one who realizes that the letters Foggy and Matt found are upside down. Wesley Owen Welch. Before, he was just Kingpin's lackey. Once again, made important by being the reason Jackson was set up. He's not likable, but he's given more to do, and it's fun that Foggy figures out WOW are his initials since he was such a jerk to Foggy earlier in the film. The Kingpin. His best scene got cut out of the theatrical cut, which also happens to be his introduction. He picks up a bodyguard with one hand and strangles him before he does anything else in the movie, which demonstrates his strength and makes him a threat from the very beginning. There's also a lot more to his fight with Daredevil in this version, and that strength is taken advantage of there too. As I said in the other review, this isn't a perfect movie. There are several small scenes that were added back to this cut that it didn't necessarily need. There is a full 20 minutes of Daredevil's backstory about the young Matt Murdock and his father before anything else happens in this version. Now, it's all great stuff, and I think the exchange in the hospital where Matt says to his father, "Something's happening to me and I don't know what it is," should have been in both versions, but it goes on a little long. There's a new Bullseye scene where we see him walking through an airport where he'll fly to New York, and it's fun, but I think it should have been his introduction rather than the second time we see him. It serves no real purpose here, but we see him rub the circle around his forehead through a hat, and he's got a paperclip in his mouth. And both of these seem like introductions to things we've already seen in his previous scene, where he takes the hat off and kills someone with paperclips. The big change is that Matt leaves the roof in the Elektra rain scene rather than staying and then running off to have sex. This is fantastic because it's more realistic and more tragic. Matt's duty as Daredevil trumps his personal life, so he leaves, even though he doesn't want to. He beats up the guy he thrashed earlier in the other cut, and now when he tells Foggy he might as well stop seeing Elektra before it goes anywhere, that makes sense. He's not emotionally available, and he's walking a thin line between justice and vengeance. The man who just lost a girlfriend the day before, for exactly the same reason, wouldn't stay on the roof. And now he's justified in beating himself up for making the same mistake. Of course, some of the same problems I have with the other cut still exist here. The whole issue of Daredevil nearly killing Bullseye but sparing Kingpin isn't resolved, and the way he and Elektra meet is the same, so it's still quite weak. I give the director's cut a 3 out of 4. It has depth, it has scope, it has people for the most part acting like people, and it isn't forced together like an impatient 5-year-old trying to do a jigsaw puzzle. Thanks for watching, and please check out my and Vince's new video series, Geeks Not Nerds. Join me next time when I'll be reviewing Batman Returns.